On an afternoon where Arsenal has just completed their latest Premier League win and Manchester United are now 3-1 up in their FA Cup match against West Ham in stoppage time, we're going to kick things off with cricket and the outstanding Antigua and Barbuda pacer Alzarri Joseph once again showed fight. But South Africa have the advantage at stumps on day 2 of the first test at Supersport Park in Centurion. South Africa added just 28 runs to their overnight 314 for 8 to be dismissed for 342 in their first time at bat. Alzarri Joseph claimed 2 more wickets to finish with 5 for 81, his first 5-wicket haul in Test cricket. The Windies then had their turn at the crease, losing the first 3 wickets for 122 runs, led by 6-2 from Raymond Reaper before a major collapse spearheaded by Anrich Nortje's 5 for 36. That saw them being dismissed for 212, 130 runs behind the South African total. The Caribbean side lost 7 for 43 after being at 169 for 3 at one stage. They did, however, manage to secure 4 wickets before the close of play to leave the hosts at 49 for 4. An overall lead of 179. Aidan Markram is still at the crease on 35, while Alzarri Joseph has so far picked up 2 for 17. Let's hear from Jason Holder, who met the media after play today.
I think there's a bit of variable bounce, as you can clearly see. Cover balls kept low, some went off with the pitch as well too, so I think that's probably a contributing factor to the wickets that fell today. I think both teams, when batters got stuck in, they actually really applied themselves. But I don't think it's a service where even if you bat a very lengthy time, you're ever in on the surface. So I think it's when you just really got to watch every single delivery closely and try to play as late as possible. And when you get opportunities to score, just look to score. I think it's probably still tipped in their favour with them having runs on the board. As I said before, I don't think it's a pitch where you're quite ever in. You've really got to spend time, really get accustomed to the conditions and then try to pounce on anything you get to score. With the variable bounce that we're seeing now after day 2, it's something that obviously will be in the back of certain people's minds, and it's something to pay attention to. But I think the game is evenly poised, probably with them a low nudge in front, but it's setting up to be a really good one.
Yeah, Jason Holder, former West Indies Test captain there, who achieved landmark today. 150 Test wickets and 2,500 Test runs. Only the second West Indian to achieve that after fellow Barbadian Sir Garfield Sobers. Fazeer Mohammed now joins us to recap what happened today. Faz, let's start there on Jason Holder. His current form, not the best, but he entered in some shape or form a big league today.
Yes, he did. And again, we can analyze his own assessment of the state of play in a short while. But yeah, it is an achievement. What he also mentioned in context after the day's play is that the West Indies, like almost every other nation besides India, Australia and England, hardly play any Test cricket. So there's no chance of him ever getting close to the numbers of Sir Garfield Sobers. To be fair, he's never going to get anywhere near to 8,000 Test match runs in 93 Test matches, because he only has 2,000 and change in 60 Test matches. But it's good to know that he's achieved a bit of a landmark, because it reinforces his value as an all-round cricketer. And yes, he's going through a lean patch, we all know that. But again, because of his experience, because of his appreciation of circumstances and conditions, and as you can tell by his understanding of the game, he certainly still is of value to the West Indies. So yes, you can lament whether or not anyone, because of the lack of Test cricket being played, will get anywhere close to the numbers, not just of the West Indies, but of South Africa, because Anrich Nortje is nowhere close to 100 Test match wickets. So that's another sub-discussion around the discussion of the Test match itself.
Yeah, Faz, yesterday, post-play, Alzarri Joseph pointed out that the conditions of the pitch picked up for the bowlers later in the day. We saw 1 wicket fall in the first 2 sessions on day 1, 7 wickets in the final session. Today, 5 wickets over the first 2 sessions and 12 wickets in the final session. Is Alzarri onto something?
I think he is, and again, credit to him for understanding the conditions and his own himself and what he needs to do as a bowler. Didn't do it with the bat because we know he can, but again, it's a testament to that issue of the extra pace and bounce. So many of these players are being caught behind, caught in the slips, or caught at backward point because of that extra bit of bounce. And the concern is, and Jason Holder pointed it out quite correctly, variable bounce, and that could be a nightmare because again, if you're already dealing with a situation of quality fast bowling led by Anrik Nokia, Kagiso Rabada is probably going to be really up for the challenge the second time around, and you've got the support of the debutant Kotsia and of course Marco Janssen, the dangling seamer. They're going to look to capitalize on that variable bounce. So 179 runs, when you look at it on the face of it, when you think of a T20 match, a 50 over match, doesn't look like a lot. In the context of a test match, a low-scoring test match, a pitch with variable bounce, and the West Indies susceptibility, it already looks like a very difficult challenge.
Yeah, and speaking about difficult challenge today, Raymond Reifer again, stepping up for the West Indies with the bat. And Jason Holder in the interview was asked about Raymond Reifer, his thoughts about Raymond Reifer. And Jason said, of course, that he felt Reifer has been one of the more hard-working players that he had the opportunity to work with. And he felt as if, it's unfortunate that Reifer didn't get the amount of opportunities that he should have gotten. Where do you stand on that comment, Faz?
And I would be one of those town criers decrying Raymond Reifer, whom you mentioned earlier in the opening, because I just didn't feel he was a number 3. I didn't feel that he merited number 3 in the West Indies batting order. I certainly wouldn't have been convinced by a couple of half centuries against a meek Zimbabwe attack on a placid Bulawayo track. But the way he batted today, you have to give him enormous credit. The discipline, the driving straight, I think that was particularly impressive. The fact that he eschewed any opportunity of really going square too often. And yes, he played and missed. This is what you expect in these sorts of conditions, because the next day you're going to get the unplayable one, they'll touch the edge and you're gone first ball. But I really give him tremendous credit for the way that he played through the morning and afternoon sessions for as long as he lasted, and really didn't look to be out of sorts. He didn't look like someone who didn't belong there. Yeah. He's not what you would call your flamboyant, aggressive number 3.
Yeah.
He is the type who will construct an innings, and I give him all credit.
And Faz, where West Indies cricket is concerned, there is always chopping and changing, moving around, trial and error. Do you get the sense that if Raymond can keep up these, putting up these consecutive scores, he might be cementing his place on that number 3 spot?
He might be, but the question is, and this is the concern, Mariah, and again it brings us back to the amount of test cricket being played, or the amount not being played by nations like the West Indies. If he does well in the second innings, let's hope he does from a West Indies point of view, if he does well in the second test match at the Wanderers, what next? A couple of test matches against Pakistan in the middle of the year, couple of test matches against India, and then that's it. And then in January, you're in Australia. So really, and given the nature of the Caribbean pitches, where is the opportunity for Raymond Reifer to fine-tune those skills even more for the highest level of the game? Where's the opportunity, as we discussed last week, for Nkrumah Bonner back in the regional game to really develop his aptitude and his ability and his skill against quality fast bowling on helpful tracks? So there are a combination of things, but to answer your specific question, he's already showing that appetite, the discipline, and if he gets a few more decent scores in the remaining innings of this very brief test series, then he would have nailed it down for what it's worth for the remaining test matches of the year.
Yeah, many would look at this test match, Faz, and they would say 212 made by the West Indies on day number 2, slumping from 169 for 3. And many would say that the batting has let us down to this point. I want to make a case, though, that at this stage of the test match, I really do believe that it's the bowling that has let us down. And I want to point to a specific period. Now, we have a couple of graphics that I want to look at. in terms of the scores per session from yesterday and then coming into today as well. So South Africa scored 99 runs in the first session of the opening day. They lost 1 wicket. Sorry, they did not lose a wicket. Then 107 in 25 overs in the second session, losing just 1 wicket. And then I want to look now at day number 2, where the West Indies in that second session, that's the one I want to zone in on, 65 runs, 29 overs. What was the difference for me? The difference is on day number 1 in that second session, although the West Indians were not getting wickets and they allowed the South African batsmen to get away by bowling poorly. The difference on day 2, South Africa stifled the West Indies batsmen. So although they were not getting wickets, although it seemed as if Jermaine Blackwood and Roston Chase were building, and Raymond Reefer, were building a solid partnership, and they were. The moment they were able to get a wicket, the West Indians had not gone far forward. And I think the second session, Faz, on days 1 and 2 might well be the difference in this match so far. On day 1, West Indies not bowling well, and on day 2, South Africa bowling really well.
Well, I could pack up and go home, Ricardo, because you've analyzed it perfectly. I can go home, except that I'm home already in the Faz Mahal. But you're right. When you think about it, 206 for 1 after 2 sessions on day 1. Really, you've put yourself on tremendously on the back foot. I'm not letting our batting off the hooker. I just wanted to make that point because, again, the batting has capitulated against some quality bowling. But you're right. When you build pressure, and that's why, in my own view, the bowling was poor for those first 2 sessions yesterday. And I said as much yesterday when we were analysing it. Because you can't have a new bowl and bowl so many 4 balls and ease the pressure of batsmen who should be put under pressure because, as you said correctly, even if you're not getting wickets and you dry up the runs, you know sooner or later you will get that breakthrough. Sooner or later you'll kiss the edge. Sooner or later there'll be an error of judgment, as we saw in the run out with South Africa yesterday that accounted for the debutant Zorzi. And you're absolutely right. Those middle sessions, day 1 as against day 2, the stark contrast as far as the ability of South Africa to tighten the screws even if they weren't getting wickets, while the West Indies had opened the floodgates yesterday. Yeah,
15 seconds, Faz. Are you agreeing with Jason Holder that the match is evenly poised and South Africa probably has just a slight advantage?
Well, I think he's trying to be very diplomatic because South Africa has a distinct advantage already, given the conditions that we have. If they get 30, 40 more runs, 250 would be almost insurmountable.
Yeah. Well, Faz, thanks very much for chatting to us again, and we'll talk tomorrow. Hopefully the West Indies will be in a better position. We'll talk about West Indies tomorrow, but Faz is staying with us because we're going to be talking about India and Australia, which is coming up in our next segment. Stay with us.
Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news and entertainment.